Documentaries are about the people that you meet and the stories you can tell. Stories of tragedy, laughter, hope and desperation, across faraway lands or right here in your own backyard. This podcast brings these stories to you, the listener, so that you can experience the adventures of documentary filmmaking in audio form while embarking on daily adventures of your own. Welcome to Barefoot Media's Stories Within Stories podcast with your host, Simon Holland. Stephen Spencer is a former commando in the Australian Army with 10 years of military experience, including numerous overseas deployments. Following a military career, he was employed as a firefighter with the WA Fire and Rescue Service, where he served for 3 years before gaining employment overseas as a physical training advisor with the United Arab Emirates Presidential Guard for their physical strength and conditioning programs. Stephen has a proven ability to operate in high-pressure situations and hostile environments. In this episode, Stephen talks about serving in the ADF, leadership, mateship and masculinity, and life after the army. Welcome to the show, Stephen Spencer.
Thanks for having me.
Legendary Aquinian, legendary Yadara family.
Well, yes, we have a long history at both those schools. I don't know if I'm the legend. There's probably other family members I've got that are more fitting of that title. But
you reckon?
Well, I had big shoes to follow. Obviously, my dad going there and being a very famous old boy, very well known, and then both his brothers going and doing quite well, and then me being the eldest of that next generation.
Yeah,
it was a bit of pressure for sure.
I remember thinking, because we were related to Pindabor, right? And my granddad always used to tell me, this guy, and then there's the gold standard Aquinas student. But I always kind of thought, I remember you getting up at cricket, and I thought, that's what you want, because you were like prefect and there's like, kind of well-rounded.
Yeah, no, well, actually, no, I wasn't a prefect. I missed out on that. And yeah, I mean, I have nothing but, admiration for the things my dad did. And I, and he set a great example. And I never really felt the pressure so much growing up. It was probably only on reflection looking back that I can recognize a few moments where that might have been an issue, but certainly no pressure came from him really, other than the normal pressure that you get from a parent to, do the best that you can and to sort of maintain a standard of how you present yourself and how you represent a family. So, that was very cool. But yeah, I had largely a great experience at Aquinas and ups and downs for sure. And then, I had brothers, as you know, being in the same year group as my next brother, Ben, I had brothers following on, Ben and then Daniel a few years behind. And we Ben seemed to have, more success than I did. And then Daniel seemed to have more success than both of us. So it was kind of a strange one. Daniel ended up as head boy and had a very successful school career and we all sort of went then in different directions. And then of course I had a sister in between who ended up at Santa Maria, of course, as that tends to go.
And it seemed like, being the eldest is always tough, isn't it? Because you got to forge through the weeds and they just kind of follow your blueprint after that. Your parents are a bit more chill.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that for sure. That's an issue as being the firstborn. And my parents, they were young parents, so when they had me in their early 20s, it wasn't such a change or wasn't so unusual as in that period, but they were young. And so they were figuring stuff out. We have this idea that our parents somehow, they know everything or all the relevant information is downloaded into their brains as soon as they become parents. And then it's only as you get older, you realize, oh, no, they were figuring stuff out the same way that we do now. So, so they were young, so they were figuring stuff out and were very, mum was very protective as most parents are of their firstborn. And so, I was very well looked after. Some may say spoiled as a young child, but, they definitely did their best and, I have nothing but admiration for how they brought us all up.
Did you buy into the Aquinas schoolboys culture, because it was all academics and sport, You know, you obviously got sport covered. Was that kind of, were you looking to be the best kind of man you could be? What was the kind of...
Look, at that point in time as a teenager, probably not. I was very focused on sport without having a lot of success, really. I was decent at sport, but I wasn't particularly, this will sound strange, but I wasn't particularly athletically gifted. So I wasn't very fast or strong at that point in time or you know, and I went through a chubby phase as a teenager. And so I sort of, I had periods where I really did doubt myself and did doubt, and I think that's where sort of some of those question marks crept into my own sort of mental well-being as to who am I if I'm not good at sport, or if I'm not winning all the time, who am I? And that's when the sort of the pressure started to build. Academically, I felt always again that I was pretty gifted, but in some ways I was a bit lazy. I guess that's a fairly common story. But I did have periods, particularly early in high school, where in all facets I was kind of just drifting.
Yeah,
I was doing okay at sport without really working super hard, and same academically, and probably, you know, socially I was pretty awkward as well. So I was
just a normal kid.
Yeah, a normal kid, I guess, just trying to figure stuff out on the fly.
Because I always think of you, and like I think I told you before, I remember you getting up on stage as a cricketer, you got some award or you hit 100 or did something cool. Or maybe I was checking the scores where we sat next to the library. It had all the sporting results. And I remember like, you know, you're getting 60s and opening the batting or something like that. And I was like, I remember thinking, you know, you're a kid going through, you know, Mrs. Spencer's boy. And so, so always in my head, I had like you labeled as a cricketer, and then turns out.
Yeah, well, certainly cricket was probably my number one thing growing up. And I always got the feeling Dad, having done both as a kid and then going on with his football career, always felt a bit of a desire for us to follow cricket, because he didn't get to do that. So I felt like he pushed us more in the cricket realm than so much in other sports. So that was definitely my thing growing up. But, you know, I was a December birthday back when the school year was done on the calendar year. And I was a bit of a late developer anyway. So I actually I finished school. I finished year 12 and I was still 16. And I didn't really pay attention to that until after school, because I'd always, that had meant that I was always sort of competing against guys up to a year older and often, you know, far more, you know, physically developed. So after school, I was still actually able to play under 17s and all this. Yeah. And I came out of school into that and actually found myself almost dominating that level, because I'd spent so many years playing up. And so, yeah, it was tough. But I look back now on my sporting career and kind of wish, I don't think that I was exceptionally talented or could have gone on with things, but I do sort of feel that had I had more confidence and more belief in my own ability, that I could have certainly done more with my sport. But, you know, we live and learn for sure.
That was a big deal, because my birthday is November 26th. And I knew I played rugby and basketball. That's two sports I loved. And I knew the writing was on the wall, study year 10.
Yeah.
Everyone came back after that summer and were like an extra foot taller and about 15 kilos heavier. So I was like, I got to find something else. Because that's like, I don't know, boys school, it's full contact. Like even PE lessons, you know, you're playing full contact Gaelic football after recess, and then you got to go sit in English and, you know, read Anne of Green Gables or something. And like you're all torn up, you're bloody nose, you hate the guy next to you because you've been like, you know, and it was like really dog eat dog kind of thing in the best possible way.
For sure. The old king of the pack at lunchtime, you know, God, that used to be brutal. Absolutely brutal. Yeah. And you're right. And the lunchtime basketball games that, you know, call your own fouls. Unless you ended up on the ground covered in blood that was playing on, you know.
Christian once thought he was Charles Barkley, so just be trying to like ram everybody.
Yeah, it was, but you're right. It certainly, it was great to experience that growing up. And I think it really does. It's an important part of growing up, especially, you know, for boys to learn how to deal with those environments.
Roughhouse, deal with bullies, you know, all that sort of stuff kind of wasn't policed. And I think that's where you learn, like, if the teacher sucks, you take the foot off the gas 100%. Like I'm getting D's if I had like let's name Mr. Paskett, Mr. Oding, those guys.
Yeah.
I'm getting a D. But like if I've got, Mr. Coombs or something like that, and they're inspiring, you get an A's, Miss McKenzie was good for me, So I could see that it was important to have a good leader in place, and then how to be a good leader. What elements did you like? I've sort of picked a bit from all those teachers, and then you try to be a good leader when you go out into society. So with that blueprint that you had, what happened straight after school? What was you propelled out of school year 12 and then you turned in 17.
Yeah.
What was the plan?
Well, my plan was I enjoyed the writing side of school. I enjoyed English, history, and I was quite good at those. So, and I was fascinated by the news and sort of world events and things. So I felt like journalism was a natural path for me, and it very well could have been had I had just that little bit more maturity coming out of school. But I just drifted. I started things, and when it became a hassle to do them, I would go on to something else. And I was really sort of directionless after school. And I look back on that period now as quite an important period. And I'm grateful for my parents in particular, because I look back and think they must have been a bit concerned with my lack of direction and with wondering sort of where I was going to go and what I was going to do, because nothing really stuck. And yet they didn't put too much pressure on me to find something. They kind of trusted me to sort of navigate that process myself. And whether that was a conscious thing or not, I'm not sure, but it certainly allowed me to try a bunch of things, work in different places, start and not finish quite a few courses. And then it hit me at some point that aimless drifting, that it was not good to continue. And I started to really drill down the focus to what was going to get me on the right track. And I kept being drawn back to the military, which was quite a shock, I think, to a lot of people who knew me, because I had never expressed any desire to head down that path while I was at school. Didn't really have a strong family connection to the military, although both grandparents served in World War II. But other than that, no one had sort of made a career out of it. And I was kind of just drawn to it. I think it was triggered initially by reading a bunch of books on militaries and particularly the books of, say, Andy McNabb, who wrote a series of initially non-fiction and then later fiction titles around his experience in the first Iraq War. So I read those and just couldn't put them down, and they sounded, really sort of thrilling to me and exciting. And I thought, that could be what I want to do. And it ticked a lot of boxes. It was kind of adventurous. It was going to help me settle a lot of those questions and those doubts that I'd had about myself for a few years, whether I was capable of doing something really difficult, particularly with a strong physical element to it. And, I wasn't really sure, but I certainly set my mind to that and started really preparing myself as much as I could. Training a lot, doing a lot of running, a lot of time in the gym, a lot of preparation to go and do that. And it just took me a little while to sort of make that leap of faith. And it was, I think I was not long, or sort of between my 20th and 21st birthday by the time I did make that leap and committed to it. And, it was a big leap, but in the end I'd made up my mind and went and did it. And it was interesting. So flew, I think we flew into Melbourne from Perth, and then a bus was provided to drive us to Kapuka near Wagga Wagga, where they do the army recruit training. And as soon as we got off the bus, all the cliches around recruit training, it's pretty similar experience. Lots of yelling, lots of chaos.
Like
people,
Full Metal Jacket stuff.
Yeah, not quite that extreme by the early 2000s when I was doing it, but yeah, similar, very much. Still a lot of people freaking out, and I remember in that first sort of 30 minutes of chaos, the thought occurred to me that I'm in the right place as much as, because I could sort of see through all the facade, and I just enjoyed the atmosphere of it. And so recruit training, a lot of people find that shift really, really challenging, but I just felt like I was in the right place and really sort of thrived in that initial part.
Because all your needs are taken care of, right? Because you got a place to sleep, you got food going to come. You just got to sit down and get yelled at and bust your ass, really.
Yeah, exactly. And